This is Earth. We are lucky to be able to call this beautiful place our home, but the way we humans live is pushing her natural balances to a tipping point. See, the Earth has natural processes, one of which is a carbon cycle. Human activities interfere with this cycle, pumping carbon into the atmosphere that otherwise would have remained deep under the Earth's crust. Since the late 1800s, atmospheric CO2 levels have been gradually climbing. This is due to the burning of fossil fuels at an industrial scale, ultimately emitting more carbon than what is naturally sequestered by the Earth. The scariest part of this is that we continue to emit record levels of carbon, the graph of which closely parallels that of atmospheric CO2 levels. This next table shows how much CO2 levels have increased each decade, showing a clear trend of exponential growth. This exponentiation will only get worse as our emissions continue to climb and natural carbon sinks are destroyed. These natural carbon sinks, such as trees, wetlands, and oceans, play a vital role in offsetting our carbon emissions. The ocean alone is able to capture about 30% of the total CO2 emitted by humans, or about 11 billion tons annually. That being said, these natural carbon sinks are not enough by themselves. This is especially true due to the fact that they are continuously destroyed, releasing all their stored carbon as well as preventing them from ever capturing carbon in the future. Another problem with relying on the Earth to clean up our mess is that as the ocean is absorbing CO2, it is simultaneously becoming more acidic as CO2 dissolving in water forms carbonic acid. If the oceans continue to acidify, this will prevent marine life from being able to properly build their shells and ultimately will result in mass devastation of ocean life. We know the ocean captures about 11 billion tons of our CO2 emissions, but what about other carbon sinks? Well, forests are responsible for about 15 billion tons of CO2 capture per year, but wildfires and deforestation release nearly half of this back into the atmosphere, amounting to a net sink of 8 billion tons per year, or a bit under 25% of total emissions. There are other carbon sinks as well, some of which are highly efficient given their size, but they don't cover as much area, so they are only able to sequester an additional 1 to 2 gigatons, roughly. When we add all this up, we get about 20 billion tons that are sequestered by the Earth naturally, which leaves about 20 billion in the atmosphere each year. One thing I would like to note is that the Earth's natural carbon cycles move much more carbon than this. I am only focusing on the human interference with the carbon cycle. At this point, I've thrown out a bunch of information about rising carbon levels in the atmosphere and how the Earth is not able to keep pace with our emissions. But why do we care? Well, future generations and other species should have a right to access the same natural resources we do, and to not be greeted with the fiery embrace of oil. The way we are living right now is simply not sustainable. Consider this quote: "The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long." Right now, the whole human race is burning extremely bright. Our stint with fossil fuels started a mere 200 years ago, and we have already changed the planet in major ways. There is an urgent need to protect natural carbon sinks, both so they can continue to capture carbon and so they don't release carbon that is already stored. Sustainable land management, reforestation initiatives, and the preservation of existing natural habitats are vital strategies to ensure these sinks continue to function effectively. We need to implement an approach that focuses not only on protecting these precious ecosystems, but also that reduces carbon emissions. There are nearly 20 billion tons of CO2 added to the atmosphere each year, and claimed artificial carbon capture won't make a dent in this. By incentivizing people to protect natural ecosystems and by switching to renewable energy sources, we can still save our beautiful planet.